Now I look back and there's no regret of anything, because everything that I went through in Afghanistan wouldn't have happened how it did, and it wouldn't have led me to where I am in life today. And I absolutely love where I am in life today and who I am.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
When we experience challenges or obstacles in our lives, some people seem to collapse under the pressure or turn away from adversity, while others stay the course, overcome the roadblocks, and keep moving forward. And you don't have to guess to determine which type of person our next guest is. Brian Fleming is an Army veteran that survived a blast from a suicide bomber and now speaks on resilience and leadership to people at schools and Fortune 500 companies across the country. Brian, it's an honor to have you on the show, and welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Would you mind telling me a little bit about life before joining the Army?
Yeah. Before joining the Army, I was in high school. 9/11 had taken place about 2 years prior to that. I graduated in 2003, which makes me sound young to some people and extremely old to others. More notably, those who don't know who John Wayne is, they think I graduated high school after the War of 1812, apparently. But other people are like, "Oh, you're 38, like you're just a pup." So yeah, it was 2001. 9/11 happened, and I graduated in 2003. I was on track to go to college and become a doctor. I wanted to help people. I had the grades for it. I put in the effort. And the first week of my senior year, I said, you know what? I'm trading in advanced physics and college physics for all the AP stuff for weightlifting and swimming and, so some other stuff. And my counselor overlooked it. She didn't see that I'd done that. And she pulled me in about a month and a half into school and goes, if I would have caught this, I never would have approved it. I said, well, think about it. We're at war. This is going to help me with where I am going. And she goes, yeah, okay. And so, 9/11 really incentivized me to join the military. I mean, if you get attacked, you have to defend yourself. All the politics and the conspiracy theories or who knows what narratives beyond all that, I don't know. All I know is we were attacked, and you don't just sit around when somebody comes and attacks you in your backyard. And for years, I didn't know why I joined the military. That was one reason, but at about 30 years old, I realized I didn't. I never really knew if I had what it took as a man to do what I needed to do. I didn't really have a father around growing up. Really rocky situation growing up, and so I never got initiated into manhood, or I didn't know that you're a man, you've got what it takes to get through stuff. And so I just subconsciously, I didn't even realize I was thinking it. I thought, well, if you go to war and fight for your country and survive it, or whether you do or don't, well, at least you knew you had what it took then, or at least you did enough that's enough to stand on to say, I have what it takes to get through things. And I am a man. It was an identity thing from a very young age that I didn't know I was lacking. And at this point, I'm happy to say I'm not there anymore, but it's been through very, very difficult things that, like all of us, that I've, become the person I am today.
With 9/11 occurring 2 years before graduating, and you had this life of service already kind of planned out, was there any type of event that led you to go, hey, college isn't going to be the route that I go right now, and joining the A branch of the military seemed more appealing?
That first week of 12th grade, that senior year, I was so burned out in studying, and I just needed to jump out of some airplanes and shoot some machine guns and blow stuff up. And I always dressed up as Rambo, played with sticks as guns in the woods, growing up as a kid. I mean, it was prophecy fulfilling itself. My brother was in Marine Corps boot camp 2 weeks from graduation when 9/11 took place. And his drill instructors, they all brought in the TV and said, you're all going to war. And everybody was confused because you've been telling us that for 16 weeks and they didn't know if it was real. And it was a time like that. And so, I was tired of studying. I needed a break. I'll go back to college later. Military will pay for it, whatever. The thought of studying for another 9 years straight without a break, I needed a break after high school. And I thought, well, I also thought, I've known people in the military in the past. And it's I never want anyone to be able to say you have this cush living, not cush living, but compared to the rest of the world, we have it damn good here in America. We have it so easy that people complain about the dumbest stuff. I mean, if you've ever lived in a third world country, developing country, which is most of the rest of the world, you would realize it is insanely good how we have it here. And I really never wanted anybody to be able to say, Brian, you're enjoying that because, better people than you, like, gave that to you and you did nothing for it. And I don't say that to say if you didn't join the military, you should feel guilty. We all have our path in life. We all have our value that we bring in our place. Some people would be horrible in the military. I wasn't even perfect for it, but I did it, But it was a few different things that contributed there.
Oh, that's amazing. And to think that the Army was a break, so to speak, during a time of war from studying. What inspired you to join the Army than any other branch? I mean, you mentioned a brother in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I went to join the Marine Corps initially, and I remember the recruiter saying, because I wanted to be infantry, and that's what I was. So Army and Marine Corps both have infantry. I got to MEPS down in Miami for the in-processing, the evaluation, all that. And the recruiter said, hey, unofficially, say no to everything. I said, okay, that's easy enough. And I got one question from the doctor. He goes, hey, the doctor at MEPS said, have you ever had bronchitis? Or have you ever had pneumonia or something? And I said something like, instead of no, like I should have, I just said, I don't know, maybe when I was a kid or something. Like, I have no idea. There's no record of it. I said, I don't know. Check mark, flag. 6 months go by. I'm graduating high school in 3 months. And I'm looking at the recruiter in the Marine Corps going, hey, dude, like, I got to get a waiver for something there's no record of that I didn't even say I had. And he's like, dude, I told you to say no to everything. And I'm like, I know. And then they come back and they're like, well, you have breathing problems. You have like asthma. And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I was outrunning the Marine Corps recruiters who were on active duty. I was outperforming people, that were, I'm like, what problem are you saying there is? I come from a family of state championship cross country runners. Like, we're distance people. Like, I mean, look at me. I'm like, I'm not a linebacker. And they're like, he's like, sorry, man. And I went next door to the Army and I'm like, look, here's what's going on over there. I want to do infantry. We're at war. And their Army recruiter's like, well, dude, we got infantry all the same. And we'll give you $5,000 if you join today. I'm like, sign me up, because I'm doing it anyway. And so, I would have done fine in the Marine Corps. I have no doubt with that. Infantry, whatever. If you ask a Marine that, they'll tell you different because they've been trained to say that. But I tell my Marine buddies, but love the Marine Corps guys and ladies. But that was just how it happened. And now I look back and there's no regret of anything, because everything that I went through in Afghanistan, which we'll get to a little bit, wouldn't have happened how it did. And it wouldn't have led me to where I am in life today. And I absolutely love where I am in life today and who I am.
Well, now that you're bringing it up, could you tell me a little bit about your time in service and over in Afghanistan?
I after boot camp or basic training, I was assigned to the 2nd Infantry Division in South Korea. Did my first year there as mechanized infantry. I was that 19-year-old kid that they gave a machine gun to, so my dream came true. And I had an M249 squad automatic weapon, the SAW. And I remember the first time going to the range, I laid down behind it, and all I could think of was all those Rambo movies and Predator and Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger growing up. And they're like, all right, machine guns, you just 3-round burst is the most accurate. So I'm like, all right, 3-round burst. I did that for like 3 seconds, and then I'm like, screw it. I've always wanted to do this. I just held that trigger down, and there's just brass flying everywhere. It's like the most massive sounding gunfight. And suddenly I get kicked in the side of the head. And I don't know what your audience is here, so I won't use the profanity that was used on me, but my first sergeant comes up, kicks me in the helmet as I'm on the ground. He goes, what the are you doing, private? And I'm just like, you don't say anything to him except you're right. So I'm like, Roger, First Sergeant. And he goes, no, what the are you doing? And I'm like, Roger, First Sergeant. He goes, what are you doing? I go, Roger, First. And he just walks away. And I'm like, okay. So I did 3-round bursts the rest of the time, but I had 30 seconds of glory at 19. I'm like, okay. That was so I got that out of my system. Though I would get more opportunities to get more out of my system, I came back from second ID in Korea, and I was assigned to the 10th Mountain Division, and they sent me to Afghanistan, and I was a team leader in an infantry platoon, scout sniper platoon in particular, and about 17 guys I think we had in that platoon. And we were there from March of 06 to November. However, I only lasted until late July, and I got medevaced out. About a month after arriving in Afghanistan, we were in like RC South, RC East, so the like southern and eastern part of Afghanistan. About a month after arriving, April 18th of 06, we ran over a bomb buried in the road in our Humvee, blew it up, set it on fire, completely destroyed it. 2 guys got medevaced. Fortunately, they survived and returned to duty within the month. They were, just minor bumps and bruises. A double stack of anti-tank mines that were linked together that the back tire ran over, and I was in the back seat on the other side from that one. And I walked away that day. In fact, I drug one of the guys out of the vehicle. I was able to, thankfully, and get him out. And I didn't think I was injured because physically I wasn't bleeding. I wasn't like physically hurt. But man, I started having headaches every day. I started forgetting little details about little things prepping for missions, things I know to do. And I started noticing like my squad leader would get on me more. Like, hey, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And I started thinking, what's this guy's problem? Like, I know my job. What I didn't realize is that later on I was overlooking little details and things. And little details like that in a combat zone can get people killed. Well, fast forward a few months later, a suicide bomber drives his minivan into my door of my Humvee in Kandahar and explodes. I mean, from me to this wall behind me or closer. And bulletproof glass and armor plating, thankfully, on the Humvee, but it still burned me second and third degree, which is now healed. Most of it, my face was second degree, but in my neck, but that healed. My hands were third degree. Woke up in a ditch on the side of the road, had no idea where I was or what happened. Medevaced out, 14 months at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, skin grafts, reconstructive surgery, burn treatment, all the TBI symptoms, traumatic brain injury symptoms, the headaches, the memory issues, the hypervigilance, all that was amplified. And so that's when I started realizing after being home, like, man, where did I put my keys, or where did I? It's kind of, and it's frustrating, but there are also some funny times looking back on it, because like I would forget to do like 4 or 5 things, and somebody would say, well, hey, write it down on a notepad, right? So I'd write it down on the notepad. Well, then I'd lose the notepad. And so then it's like the Army in its infinite divine wisdom said, well, you can't keep track of a notepad. Here's this $500, they called it a PDA, personal data assistant. Dell used to make them back then. It's before we had smartphones. I found that thing like 3 years ago when I was moving, and it's still in the box, never been touched, brand new. And I lost that too. And so it was pretty frustrating, but a lot of the issues I was dealing with, they weren't made up. They were actually real, and they were based on that. My brain had been injured from the shock of those blasts.
That's absolutely wild. Now, when you had returned home and you found out that you had TBI, which is for most people, it's an invisible injury. There usually aren't physical signs that tell us that we have suffered that, regardless of how close or far from an explosion we were. How did you begin addressing those issues as you began healing?
I just kept getting frustrated that I was forgetting everything, or that I couldn't. Like there wasn't like a magic bullet. I'll tell you the biggest thing, the absolute number one biggest thing that made the difference. Though I didn't get the opportunity or know about this for 13 years after that injury. It was about 3 years ago that I got this opportunity. The biggest thing that worked, and it worked fast, like within a few days, I started seeing improvement, was hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It's called HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. You lay in an oxygen chamber like for an hour, and you breathe pure oxygen. It's medically monitored by specially trained doctors and nurses, and it reoxygenates your brain. It literally regenerates dead brain cells. And I did the scan before and after the treatment. Like before was like I did it for 30 days, twice a day for an hour, 5 days a week. So I got like about 40 treatments over the course of a month. And beforehand, there were these pictures on the SPECT scan, the brain scan, that were just gray. And then afterwards, I'm looking at the same thing, and it's lit up like a Christmas tree. And I said, "Hey, what are all these lights over here on this after scan?" And the guy goes, "Oh, that's called brain activity." It's like your brain's working again. Like those parts of your brain were like dead. They were laying dormant, like they weren't functioning, and now they are because, well, you give oxygen to a living organism and it flourishes, which makes total sense. We can't breathe without it, and so that was the biggest thing. And it was the 22 project out of Delray Beach, Boca Raton, Florida, that offers that to veterans free of charge. They pay for it all, and I got to do it. And I started sleeping better. Like within 3 nights, I was sleeping through the night after like the 3rd day. So when it comes to TBI, I found nothing better than hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And there's been 0 negative side effects. And it's only gotten better and better, like the year to year and a half following my completion of the treatment. So that's all I can say personally. That's the only thing that's worked.
That's absolutely incredible. And I just want to get this timetable right. You said 13 years after the injury is when you discovered, when you were approached with this modality of treatment?
Yeah, about 13 years. The VA never offered it. The military won't. Like, they don't believe in it. They won't do it. I've had friends that laughed at showing doctors scans, brain scans, going, "Look at the difference, and I don't have these problems anymore." And they're like, "Oh, that's all. That doesn't." And it's bizarre. Yeah, I digress. But yeah, it's the only thing that's worked. Since your question was about TBI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I know that there's a lot more soldiers, veterans, Marines out there with undiagnosed TBI because we didn't back in the early days of the war, 2003, 2004, 2008 even, we didn't completely document every single blast that we encountered. It just so happened that you suffered physical injuries during an explosion. But, research has gone on to show that being exposed to a blast, even within a 50-foot radius, can produce some form of TBI. And when you mentioned the frustrations of dealing with some of this forgetfulness or lack of sleep, inability to stay asleep or fall asleep or whatever that is, it just ends up compounding over time. And so to have a modality like this available that's worked for you must bring a lot of hope to others that may be going through something similar.
Yeah, there's only been 1 or 2 treatments that were like very quick and very healing. HBOT was one of them. I should have been given HBOT the day I walked out of the hospital after my inpatient time with the surgery and stuff. HBOT should have been the first thing I was given, and it's completely insane that I wasn't. It makes absolutely 0 sense. It's inside out, it's backwards. And every guy I know, every single person I know who's had a TBI, who's gone through HBOT, has gotten better and seen fast results. We all had the same story. And there's hundreds and thousands of these people now. And I interview a lot of them. and I know these people. And they're like, "Oh yeah, you're telling me my own story. Like I'm with you." Like, exactly. And it's amazing.
No, that's absolutely incredible. Now I want to go back in time. You just suffered your injuries, and during those 14 months of recovering from the burns and the other injuries that you sustained during the suicide blast, what was your mindset as you were working through that to transition back into civilian life?
It's kind of weird. I don't want this to sound wrong, but I just sort of dealt with it. Like I'm trying to think of, like, I'm not better than anybody, but I remember when the psychologist first asked me, "Brian, you got blown up and you saw your friend laying bleeding out on the side of the road. He's ear injured. How'd that make you feel?" I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Really, guy? That's your best question?" It sucked. It hurt. I got blasted. My friend's half dead over here. Like, what the hell do you think I felt? Now, I had the same, I kind of have the same approach to life. Like, here's the thing. Everybody responds to trauma differently. Some people, they break, they shut down, overwhelm gets them, and they just go, no, they don't do anything. it's like fight, flight, or freeze. And everyone's different, and you don't know how people are going to respond until they're in a truly traumatic situation. For some reason, I was just always very practical about it. People would say, "Oh, you have a Purple Heart. What happened? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want." And I understand that, but I'm like, no, my guy drove in a suicide bomber, blew up 3 feet away from me, and I happened to survive. He was the only one who died, which is why my Purple Heart license plate on my truck says "Nice try." That's just my way of having fun with it. I've always just been very proud. Yeah, my other license plate on my Jeep says "Slow Mover" because I didn't get out of the way in time. It's just like, yeah, the guy blew up and I got injured, but I'm still here. So I'm injured. I'm still here though, and I'll get better. Like I've always been very just practical. It doesn't bother me to talk about any of it. That's not the case with everybody. And so, like I said, I don't want that misinterpreted. I'm not saying, well, lucky for him, it's so easy. It hasn't been easy. But when it comes to talking about what happened, it's just never been an issue. I'm very straightforward in my thinking and how I communicate. Sometimes too much, so that I can seem less empathetic. I don't mean to be, but that's just my style of thinking and communicating. So when it came to getting past this, my whole mindset was, well, I'm here, I'm burned, I'm injured, but I'm alive. So I'll heal and get better, and I'll move on with life, whatever that looks like. And there wasn't anything more to the story. And some people, they get so wrapped up in the emotions or in their head about so much, because that's very human to do. I don't deal much with that. And I think a lot of that ability of mine, and I don't even really know I'm doing it. I think I developed that when I was young, because my parents had a very violent divorce when I was about 11, extremely violent. It was bad without going into detail. And I think as a kid, I learned to shut off my emotions in order to try to deal with things. So in a way, that I think that trauma sort of prepared me in a good way for what I would face years later coming home from Afghanistan, where it actually worked to my benefit to be able to shut off my emotions and just see things for what they are. Mom's hurt, dad's in jail, I'm moving across the country, or well, I'm 13 and I'm basically on my own. And then I moved across the country, back to where my mom lived, and all that for a 13-year-old. I mean, seeing violence, and I mean, it's bad, but it also toughens you. It's like I said before we started this call, no, people say, I want to be more resilient. And I'm looking at you going, no, you don't. I mean, you do, but you don't. You want to be more resilient, but nobody wants to do the stuff you have to do to be more resilient. It's like praying for patience. Like, you're going to get every freaking red light going through the worst part of town during rush hour. And so, like, I don't pray for resilience. I don't try to be resilient. I've just had life experiences that have been bad where I've had to be resilient. I didn't even know that was a word or a concept. We naturally, as human beings, we just deal with stuff. Like, we find a way around things. We just sort of do. I don't know. I mean, it's how we're made. We adapt.
Well, it sounds like you've been able to take that mindset and continue to improve yourself. I mean, the fact that you were still seeking out different forms of therapy to continue to improve where you're at now, which led you to that breakthrough with your TBI treatment. Now, while you were going through all of that 14-year gap, you also built a whole nother career for yourself, inspiring others. How did you end up deciding to move into a career field of public speaking?
I didn't plan on it. It was completely unplanned. I was at the medical center one day, doing my treatments, and the guy who would become one of my absolute best friends and my first mentor, Dave Reaver, he was a Vietnam vet, burned in the face really bad. A phosphorus grenade blew up right next to his ear. As he went to throw it, he got shot in the hand by a sniper aiming for his head in Vietnam on a riverboat. Well, it burned him really bad back then. Well, he came and he was speaking that day to me and a bunch of other soldiers and service members who were injured at the medical center. And I talked to him for a couple minutes before and after. Long story short, we hit it off. We became friends. He basically said, Brian, if you're willing, I'll show you how to do something amazing with this. And I said, okay, well, I'm infantry. I'm injured. I'm not going to get out and become a cop. I'm done dealing with scum of the earth. I'm open. I was open to anything. I had no experience in it. My experience with public speaking in the military was basically yelling at people, which I probably did too much, but go back to other past traumas and probably maybe putting too much of yourself out there. And, but he said, I'll show you how to do something with it. And I said, okay. And he flew me, which I actually forgot to ask for permission because I was still active duty. He said, hey, I've got this rally going on, this patriotic rally up in Manhattan, Kansas, right outside, I think it was Fort Riley. He said, I'd love to have you come there. And I said, well, the military doesn't really pay me much. So, I can't really, get away right now. He goes, well, we'll pay your whole way. Turns out he actually paid me to come and speak, which I didn't know he was going to do that. But he said, oh, well, we'll pay you. We'll pay your way. I said, well, free is good because I grew up poor. So don't offer me something free. I'll take it. And so I went there. And right in the middle of his talk, I'm still red in the face. I still have compression garments on my hands from the burn treatment, from the surgery. And he said, he looked right down at me in the front row and he pointed at me and into the microphone. He says, Brian, come on up here. Tell him about yourself. And he handed me the microphone and he said, take about 2 minutes. And I basically said, I was in Afghanistan. I got blown up. I guess I'm still here for a reason. Go for it. I don't know, like the worst motivational talk ever. But what happened when I got off stage completely changed the course of my life. It was a 1 degree shift that was small, but it was massive. Like if you're 1 degree off and you go 10 feet, you're good. But if you're 1 degree off and you go 1,000 miles, you're going to end up in a totally different place. But this was in a good way. Because when I got off stage, I had this young lady come up to me who was probably about my age at the time, young, early 20s. And she said, hey, Brian, growing up, I was raped and I was molested and abused. My boyfriend just broke up with me and he hurt me too. And about 2 weeks ago, I tried to kill myself and I failed. And she just left it there. Didn't even know her name. And I just said, gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What do you say to somebody like that? But then she said this at the end. She said, Brian, but if you can get through all that, referring to Afghanistan, my injury, she said, I think I can get through this. She had hope, not because I had any advice for her. I didn't know what to say, but she simply knew my story and saw that I was still going. And, we rub off on each other like that. Wow, if that person went through that, then maybe I can get through this. That's the same thought I didn't know I had when I met Dave, but looking back, I did. Like his injury was worse than mine. We think everyone always has it worse than we did, but worse is relative. I mean, I would rather get blown up again and go through all that than have to work through all the mental baggage that comes with being sexually assaulted as a child, like numerous times, and oh my gosh, the trauma that comes with something like that. Like, hell, take my leg, don't take my brain, don't take my mind. Like, take my leg, take my arm, let me go through the burn again. So it was just different. But I realized in every audience I would speak to, there were people I was finding afterwards that would say, I haven't been blown up, but they had, just in a different way. But I've been through this and I'm not going to kill myself, or I'm going to get off of this stuff, or I want to be better. And people say I helped that young lady. And I guess I did without meaning to, but the truth is she helped me because I was looking for purpose in life at that point. I was looking for the next thing and I was looking for purpose. And I didn't know what happened in that moment until about 5 years after my injury. I was reading a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and a very intelligent psychiatrist. And he said, when it comes to suffering, in that book, it's one sentence. He said, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. And in that moment, when I realized that lady wasn't going to go home and kill herself because she saw I kept going, I found a shred of meaning and I didn't know it, but it grew over the years. And that's why I do what I do today.
It's absolutely beautiful. And it's incredible how we don't have to be experts at solving problems to be able to help people. We just need to be able to be vulnerable enough to share our journey with others. And we don't know who we're going to impact or the impact that it'll have in their life moving forward. But we know that a seed has been planted of hope.
Just knowing that you're not the only one in pain is often enough to take your next step, because somebody who's going through something awful, they don't need the next 10 miles of answers. They need the next step. They can't, it's that whole, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't try to, if you try to do the whole thing, it's too much. It's overwhelming. You shut down, you get frustrated. Someone who's going through something, or if they're suicidal, they don't need a complete laid out plan. That's good to have, but that can be overwhelming if it's too big. What they need is their next step. Or I've never been an alcoholic, but I have friends who've been through AA, and they say things like one of the things is, you know what? I will have another drink, but not today. Maybe tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and they go, well, I will have another drink, but all right, just not today. It's like, how do you get out? How do you keep yourself running and working out when you don't want to? You put on your running shoes and you step outside your door. Everything else takes care of itself. It's like going to the gym. Getting to the gym is the worst part of working out. It's the part no one wants to do. It's like getting from your front door to the gym. Once you're in the gym, you're good. Well, I think it's really similar to that kind of mindset. You have that next step, and then as you take each next baby step, you gain momentum. Not only that, you meet other people, and they come beside you and they help you, and things just go in more of an upward spiral rather than a downward spiral.
Absolutely. That's terrific advice to start laying out for people. And I know that you continue to share your journey with others and teach about change management and having a leadership battle plan. What does that usually entail on like an organizational level? Yeah,
well, I realized when I started speaking for bigger companies, you've heard of a lot of these companies, Fortune 500s. I realized I knew things they didn't when I started speaking for them, because I remember the things they were asking me to talk about and explain. I'd known that stuff since I was 19 years old. I learned it in the military. And I was thinking, you have like a multi-billion-dollar organization. How do your people not know this? And with that many people, it's even worse, and it's more fracturing to the organization if you have people not on the same page and doing things that are in alignment and knowing how to get through and overcome and adapt to the challenges and changes they face. Well, everything I know, I learned in the military. Everything that I teach, I base it on what I learned in the military. When I talk about overcoming change, it's the same process if you're a middle manager in a company, or if you're going through some sort of major life crisis personally, whether it's like you lost your job, or maybe a relationship didn't work out, or you've fallen on financial hard times. Getting through it is only like 8 or 9 steps, very simple steps that is very similar to planning a mission and carrying it out. In the military, we have a 5-paragraph op order. I turned it into 9 because I had to take some things out and adapt some concepts, but it's very similar. I'm not teaching anybody how to lay ambushes on the side of the road. So I'm like, well, I need to take that out. That wouldn't be productive. But, there was a concept in that. And so I took the concept and adopted it. And I just created this battle plan that I call Overcome Change. In fact, the course Overcome Change is the course I created, teaching people how to overcome unexpected changes in their life, unexpected challenges, using proven military battle strategies, mission planning strategies. It's what I used that I didn't realize I was using to put my life back together after getting injured in Afghanistan. I didn't know I was doing it. It was second nature because I knew it so well. But when people started asking me, how do you do it? How do you do it? It frustrated me a little bit because I didn't know how to say it in a way or explain it in a way where they could understand it and apply it too. Because you're fighting your own battle and you're asking me this, how do I get through mine? Because you're trying to figure out how you can get through yours. So I thought I'm doing a huge disservice by not like mapping this out somehow. So one day I just sort of wrote it out on like the back of a napkin or something. And I'm like, well, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. If you know these things and you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers you're looking for. And you'll have to adapt some things along the way because nothing's ever perfect. Like we say in the military, even the best plan goes out the window when the bullets start flying. And it often does. And you have to adapt in the moment there. And that happens to us in our lives. So everything I teach, it's not Brian's good idea fairy. It's stuff that's been proven with over 250 plus years of proven combat strategies. There's reasons we plan certain things into an operations order, like a mission plan. There's a reason certain things are in there and other things are taken out. It's because it ensures the highest probability of success and survival if you use it this way. And so I just adapted that to life. And then I teach it to people. And people get results relatively quickly. It depends on what it is. But I've helped people get out of horrible marriages. Hell, I helped my own mother divorce an abusive husband of 25 years. She was mentally stuck in that for 25 years. We drew up a battle plan. She left in 2 weeks. She's never been happier, never been healthier. Yeah, it was like the best battle plan I think I've ever written for anybody. And seeing my mother happy again and not being abused, and she's healthy again, and doing better financially. And other people, they just have a personal trauma they go through, or man, they're trying to be a better leader at work, and it's like, well, here, like, let's talk about this.
That's incredible. Now, I know that you've written 4 books. You've spoken publicly for the last 15 years. You've just released a course on overcoming change. What's one key takeaway that if you went and spoke at a group that you would want those people to walk away with?
Well, given I speak on overcoming things like unexpected challenges and change, my biggest first piece of advice, if somebody is kind of lost in what they're doing, where do I start? I would say focus on identifying the real enemy you're facing. So many people are facing what they think is the enemy, and they keep fighting that thing, but it's not the real enemy. And so it keeps coming back. Perfect example. In Afghanistan, those roadside bombs, the IEDs that the Taliban would bury in the road, that hurt when you hit them. But the IEDs were not the enemy. The enemy was the person going out to the road at 3 o'clock in the morning under the cover of darkness and burying that bomb in the road. So when you leave the fob at 5:30 a.m., you're going to roll out there and hopefully hit it. If you don't take out the bomb maker, the person planting the bombs, you're always going to have bombs on the road. So we focused on getting rid of the bombs that were in our way, but we also hunted the bomb makers. And we found a lot of them. We would go after them. And so in your life, you might be facing something and you think it's the enemy, but it's not. It's evidence. What you're fighting is evidence that the enemy's present, not the actual root cause, the root source of what you're experiencing. And so the real enemy in any situation usually lies just beneath the surface of the obvious problem you're facing. Usually the real enemy is just beneath the surface of the obvious problem. Because every enemy wants to attack from a place of cover and concealment to maximize your damage and minimize his or her damage. Well, it's the same way with whatever issue you're facing. And until you identify what the real enemy is that you're facing, you're going to have trouble getting past in any of the other things I teach on that battle plan, because until you know what you're facing, you can't devise a strategy. And so if you think you're fighting, a fire ant, but there's actually 3 mountain lions on your property, buddy, you've got bigger issues. You need a bigger gun. You don't need raid. You don't need a lighter. You need, a big gun, a shotgun, maybe an assault rifle, or something, a very large caliber sidearm. And so you can't decide your best course of action that's going to be most productive for you until you identify what the real enemy is you're facing. So that's what I would say to answer your question. Identify the real enemy, then go from there.
That's great advice, Brian. And for those like me who don't want this conversation to end, where can we go to get connected with you and continue to learn from you, your books, and even sign up for your course?
Yeah, my main website for speaking, if you want me to speak to your organization, just go to blownupguy.com. Even though I don't look blown up anymore, when I bought the site back in 2009, I did look blown up. Thankfully, I've healed. But people would forget my name and they'd say, "Oh, aren't you that guy who got blown up?" Because they saw me talk about it somewhere. And I just thought, well, let's make this infantry simple so they can remember me and find me. I got blown up. I'm a guy, blownupguy.com. Even though I have lots of friends who are guys who got blown up and they're way worse off than me still. But they're also some of the coolest people I know. Go to blownupguy.com. You can do that. My online course, Overcome Change, just go to overcomechange.com. And you'll see the online course there. And that teaches you proven, very simple, very easy to follow and apply, proven military battle strategies that you can apply to your situation, no matter what you're facing, no matter what kind of challenge or change you have in your life. and it'll help you. It'll show you exactly how to map out where you are, where you want to go, how to get there, and then what to do next. I mean, if you just do it, if you make the plan and you don't do it, you're wasting your time. Obviously, nothing's going to happen. But if you just do it, and then if you hit a snag or a speed bump, you just adapt and kind of replan a couple parts of it and then take action again, you'll get to where you're going generally. People who don't give up tend to get what they want. And if you have a good plan that's proven to help lead you there, that's kind of a superpower.
That's amazing. The work that you've done, the hope and inspiration that you bring to others, Brian, is absolutely incredible. It's been an honor having you here on 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast. And I'll make sure that we include the links in the description of this episode for other people to go and follow. Overcomechange.com, blownupguy.com, and and the other therapy that you had mentioned in the beginning of this interview. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you all.